Hi, my name is Mary Wong, and this is Tanya Smith.
Hello.
And we're here to do your live post number 32. And tonight we're talking about why should we go gluten-free. And we'll cover lots of things about gluten-free, why some should do, why some may contemplate choosing certain foods that are gluten-free, some over others. So I guess let's get on with it. Why are we going gluten-free?
There's a lot of reasons to go gluten-free. So some people are doing it because they actually have true gluten allergies and are tested and have a condition like celiac disease. Some people are doing it because they are trying to reduce inflammation and autoimmune conditions in their body, and they want to see if reducing gluten or taking gluten out of their diet will help with their condition. I've seen a lot of people doing that with Hashimoto's thyroiditis and having a lot of benefit with that. And some people are doing it because it's a health fad and they want to see if it'll make them feel better or have more energy. So there's been a lot of information in the popular media about gluten and its effects on your health. So that's what I've seen about why people are doing it.
Yeah, and really, I mean, now you go to any mainstream grocery store and there's gluten-free products everywhere. So I really want to address that just because I find that it's not necessarily healthy. So just because you're eating gluten-free doesn't necessarily mean you're actually eating healthy.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
So one of the adage that I like to follow is when we go to the grocery store, really you want to shop on the outer perimeter of the grocery store where you have the fresh produce. What else?
Yeah, because that's where the whole foods are, right? That's where the actual foods are. All the inner aisles are the things that won't perish because they're processed enough and have preservatives in them so that they won't go bad. And so those are the areas that are going to have additives or foods that are processed in a way that our body can't recognize it and use it properly. So,
exactly. And then so you have even large grocers now that carry like this whole section, organic section, and then within that organic section there's this whole gluten-free section. And that gluten-free section, to many who have no idea, will think and get misinformed that these are all healthy products, but I think it's just a bit of a marketing scam.
Right, or just that it's a healthier choice, like if you have a gluten-free pretzel and a glutinous pretzel, that the gluten-free pretzel is going to be in some way healthier for you, and really they're both processed in a way that our bodies just can't recognize and make use of, and there's no nutrition left in either. So.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, some of the gluten-free products out there have even a higher glycemic index than the regular gluten-filled foods. And glycemic index are those that it has to do with blood sugar, and a lot of people are sensitive to blood sugar issues. So definitely people that are hypoglycemic, definitely people that are towards diabetes, and even for women with gynecological issues, people that are sensitive to blood sugar and insulin levels would be people that are diagnosed with PCO, polycystic ovaries, and I think endometriosis is one too, just because it's an inflammatory condition and there's an immune component as well. Anything else?
Well, it's the kind of thing that all of our hormones are interconnected. So if you eat a high glycemic index food and you eat them repeatedly over time, what happens is your body sends more insulin out to deal with all of the glucose in your blood because it shouldn't be there. It needs to be in your cells, giving them energy. And so insulin kind of knocks on the door of your cells and says, please let the sugar in. But over time, if your blood sugar is high and insulin is being pumped out and constantly knocking on the doors of the cells eventually, it's like having, a salesperson come to your door at dinner time. Eventually, your cell's going to say, go away. I have enough sugar to do my job. I don't need any more. And so that's when our cells start to become insulin resistant. And so it's not just that eating a high glycemic food once in a while is necessarily an issue, but when we're substituting whole foods for processed foods that are going to elevate the glycemic index, it's going to throw off our insulin. This is getting a little in-depth now.
That's okay.
But once the insulin gets thrown off, it affects all of our other hormones, including our reproductive hormones. So it's really important in the process of, trying to balance hormones at all, to make sure that we're considering, these small details that happen in our everyday lives.
Absolutely. So for those of you that are so keen on doing gluten-free, if you are not in a situation where you are celiac, which means that you can tolerate zero gluten, then you might want to consider some gluten choices once in a while anyway, right?
Sure.
That may be healthier than the gluten-free products or byproducts, I would call it. But in terms of gluten-free, really the first choice should not be the pretend gluten types of products, like a gluten-free bread or gluten-free pasta.
Gluten-free, whatever. I find that if you're going to go gluten-free, the substitutions and the products that are available as substitutions are usually disappointing anyway. And so I usually just tell people, like, if you're going to go gluten-free, just eat something else. Like, don't try to substitute your bread or your cereal or your pasta or whatever. Like, just find something else to eat. Eat some vegetables instead as a side, instead of a grain, or have, a whole grain like quinoa or rice with your meal, and just make a different kind of menu choice rather than including more disappointing substitutions.
Oh, absolutely, because I don't know about you, but have you ever tried those gluten-free breads? They taste like hockey pucks. I've never eaten a hockey puck, but I just imagine hockey pucks would taste like that.
Yeah,
right?
The texture's not the same, and the flavor's not the same, and they tend to be overly sweet to try to make up for the lack of natural sweetness in what they're made of, and they're generally just kind of disappointing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then let's talk about what can we sub for gluten-free. So there was a post through, what was it called? Healthy Mamas? Something like that, okay? And someone said, oh, I'm making this wicked butter chicken. Yeah. And she says, but I don't eat gluten and I don't eat rice, so what am I going to use? Well, there are lots of choices that you can make. And so for me, what I do actually like noodles, but hopefully you know what enoki mushrooms are, but they're white and they're quite long and they're almost noodle-like. So I use that in place of noodles sometimes.
For a noodle substitute, I will often slice up cabbage really fine, or I'll even use my spiralizer to make zucchini noodles or noodles out of sweet potatoes, and just cook them for a couple of minutes. All of those, whether just pan fry them for a couple of minutes, and those are my noodles.
Well, which is great if you have a spiralizer. How much does a spiralizer cost? So I certainly don't have one, and I can't see myself chopping it up that tiny.
No, but even like cutting cabbage that fine is pretty easy. But no, the spiralizers usually run about $30.
Oh, so totally not.
Yeah.
It won't break the bank.
It's you have to have room to store it, but I use it most days. I have a few times a week for sure.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My kids will eat them. My kids will eat zucchini pasta, and I'll put I'll use beets in the spiralizer, carrots, or sweet potatoes on top of salads.
And so, are you cooking any of this ever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just pan fry it for a few minutes with some sort of coconut oil or ghee or something like that.
And they eat it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if my kid will eat it, but I'll have to try and I'll
Gotta
try. And I'll talk to you about that later. What else? Is there anything else that we can use in place?
I will use, so oftentimes we kind of get tricked around like sides, or what do I put with my food if I'm not having a slice of bread, or if I'm not having a side of potatoes or a side of pasta, although potatoes are gluten-free.
But high glycemic index, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So it is tricky, right, when you're trying to navigate gluten-free world and a lower glycemic index. What do you do?
Yeah. So I'll often do whatever protein I'm going to have with some roasted vegetables, and then also a fresh vegetable. And I find that to be satisfying enough. Something about roasting the vegetables and bringing out the sweetness of them satisfies that kind of desire for.
Wow, and your kids eat all of this.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to work on it. Not quite working so far.
Slowly. I'll still give them some of the stuff that they like every once in a while, and I just choose not to eat it. But for the most part, yeah, they eat anything. They're pretty easygoing kids.
So then now let's bring this back to, if you're not celiac and really, or if you're just gluten sensitive, right? Maybe what we can consider is that we can have the treat once in a while, right? And I certainly believe in the 80-20 rule, where we're not so strict, and especially if we're social animals, and you're going to someone's as a house guest, and you can be quite of a pain, really. If you say no to everything.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
And it can cause stress for some people. Hence, sometimes some of my patients say, oh, I'm a flexitarian. So when they're going out socially or whatever, then giving themselves some room to have a little bit of treat. And then also not feeling guilty about it, right? Because it's not like you're using that as a mainstay. It's just once in a while, so that typically that will not really impede your overall health.
Yeah, I think there's lots of room for allowing ourselves to celebrate and to participate in life. I think food should be a joyful and nourishing experience on every level, So if you know that something is really not good for you and not good for your system, I think it becomes kind of not a treat if you have such strong repercussions later, right? Like if you know that you're really sensitive to alcohol, having several drinks is going to make you feel awful for 3 days. It's actually not that much of a treat anymore. And so finding workarounds, whatever social situation you're in, or in some way to still honor your body and what works for it, as well as, participating and being social with people and enjoying life and really kind of experimenting with ways that work for everybody.
And that's true too. I mean, ways that work for everyone is different. So some people are a little bit more tolerant, whereas others, it's like, no way, if I have a bite of this, I'm done, right? And if you're in that category, then, it may not be worthwhile. But if you're in the other camp where it's like, oh, I got a little bloating, but, I felt really good about doing it and sharing and enjoying, then that's okay. So really check in with where you're at.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that is about it.
So, as always with Chinese medicine and the way that we answer things is, should you be gluten-free was the question we started with. And the answer is it depends.
There's no one right answer. That's very true.
Just your answer.
Your answer. So should you be gluten-free? You have to kind of come from your heart and your gut.
And your gut.
Literally. And check in, right? So when you do have that treat, and don't feel guilty about it when you do, but really check in afterwards, or even during. It's like, does it actually feel good in my body? And that'll have you say to yourself, oh, gee, maybe I will actually have less of that. And certainly, I think the less we have it, the more we tend to not want it anyway, just because we'll become more reactive to it, I think.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about gluten, by the way, for people who eat wheat products at all, I think right now there's probably not a single strand of wheat that has not been adulterated in this whole world, right? Because they're trying to make strains that are, they're making all the crops resistant to drought, resistant to insects, as well as they also try to chemically change it in a way that it'll produce the harvest faster, make the crops smaller so that they can harvest it quicker to get more harvests. So all of that, it's not in its natural form anymore. So that's why a lot of people are having issues with it.
Yeah.
Any more comments about that?
Yeah, I will often, if I'm going to have something with gluten in it, will try to find grains that were here long time ago. Things like camus, spelt, red fife, wheat, all are kind of heritage grains that tend to work better for my system anyways.
And that's a very good point too. So again, maybe it's less about gluten-free, but more whole grains that will work with the body, that it's in more of a natural form. And I think that's it.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
No. And if you have some questions, please feel free to type it in and we can respond either live, or we'll just cover it through the actual post itself. So thank you for joining us. And it's time to sign off. And next week, I think we'll add in a personal story a hopeful story with regards to fertility and the success of having a child. Just so you know, my my Talks at Google just came out live as well, so please check that out. It's an hour and 5 minutes long. It's really not long, but you can bring popcorn and just watch it. And please do check it out. I like to dispel a lot of shame that is around the topic of infertility, and just again creating hope from a very positive message, and even talking about workplaces that perhaps they could instill support with regards to people that are going through fertility challenges. So yes, join us next week, again 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be here or be square. Check out my book, Pathways to Pregnancy. Check out more posts from my Facebook, and we shall see you next week, 8 p.m. Take care. Bye for now.